Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, today we are talking the until mentality. Now, this is something that I mentioned in a previous episode, but before I get into explaining where this came from while we're talking about it and getting into it, first let me tell everyone, I send out a daily motivation text message every single day, free of charge, to anyone who's in my text community who would like to receive it. So if you want to be part of that community and receive my daily motivation text, here's what you do. Text me at my number, which is 305-384-6894. Send me a text at that number right now, and every day you'll get the daily motivation straight to your phone, free of charge. And the bonus of texting me there is that you can actually respond to those text messages, and you might get some responses from me. I will actually engage with you there at that number. So check that number again, is posted down below in the show notes if you missed it. Now, this topic of the until mentality, I mentioned this in the episode when I talked about having resourcefulness when you lack resources. Whenever you're in a situation of, not having maybe as much as you wanted to have to work with as far as your clay or your tangible tools or the people you know or the information you have. That was back in episode 2089, about 3 weeks ago. And I talked about this until mentality, and I told you that there was a future episode coming on it. This is it. So until is the key word that you need when it comes to mental toughness. Mental toughness is all about the until mentality because, as I say in the intro to this show, the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. It's understanding and accepting that situations will not always be aligned or working or organized in your favor. And be that as it may, you can't just quit every single time this is the case. The problem is, if you quit every time this is the case, you'll never get anything done, because any situation you come across in life, there's going to come a point when things are not working the way that you want them to work. The until mentality is what will keep you showing up and keep you working on that situation until you get it working the way that you want it to work, or hey, until you decide that this is not worth working on anymore. But you are not going to just quit a situation just because things are not working in your favor. So understand there is a difference, and there's a concept that I call walking away in strength, which is way different than walking away as a quitter. And sometimes people may get confused by what I'm talking about there, but I explained it in episode 1662, when to walk away in strength. Also episode 948, which is when it's time to walk away. Episode 522, how to walk away when you're in the wrong life. Episode 509, knowing which fights to fight and which fights to walk away from. So there is a difference between quitting and knowing that it just makes reasonable sense to walk away in a situation. So you have to learn to, when you're in a situation that you should stay in, to hang in there, push back against circumstances, and have some fight. So that's what today's episode is about. Let's get into it. Point number one, topic once again today is the until mentality. Number one, when you know what you want and you know why you want it, it is inevitable that the how will be figured out, or it will reveal itself to you, or maybe a combination of both. When you know what you want, that means you have a clear target, you have a clear outcome that you're going after. You can see the finish line, whether in your mind or you can see it physically with your eye. And also when you know why you want it, meaning you have some fuel, you have a reason, you have a why, you have some emotion, you have some drive, some passion behind the outcome that you're trying to get to. It is inevitable that you will figure out how to get from here, where you are today with your why, to there where you want to be in the future, i.e. the what. The biggest challenge that many people have when they feel stuck or they feel frustrated or feel like they don't know what to do next is that people try to figure out, how do I do something, instead of focusing on the other two questions, which are much more important, especially when it comes to getting started and moving yourself forward. The other two questions are, what do I want? What is the outcome that I'm looking to achieve? You need to know what that is, because it's hard to score if you don't have a goal. And why do I want it? You need a reason. You need some energy, some passion, some drive behind your aiming at the target. Why is this? Because situations in life will not always be set up in your favor. So you need something behind you besides, I know what I want. You need something behind you besides knowing what you want, knowing the outcome that you want to get to when you don't have a clear roadmap. And usually when we have a big goal, if you're the type of person listening to this show, you probably have some big goals, some ambitious outcomes you want to achieve, but you probably don't know exactly how to achieve them right now in the moment. If you did, you would already have done them, especially if they're a big ambitious goal that you have. So you need this why, you need that drive, you need that passion, that energy, and those two things combined, it's kind of like magnets. The magnet of what you want, the outcome in the future, and why you want it, the drive that you have right now, they will build a bridge between each other so that you can get to and figure out the how. And then once you figure out the how, an extra bonus of the how that you don't have to do, but you can give that game back to other people. You can go tell people, okay, now I know how to do this thing. I didn't know before, just like you don't know right now, but let me tell you how to do it because I figured it out. So your what and your why, in other words, need to be stronger than your how or your lack of how. And let me say that in another way. Knowing what you want, your energy of knowing what you want, meaning how clear you are on your outcome, plus why you want that outcome, those things, you need to be more clear and more solid on both of them. Then you need to be confused and maybe shameful or upset or nervous or anxious about not knowing how to do it. In life, the way that things work with us human beings and actually any heavenly body is whichever energy is stronger controls the situation. Two people meet, whoever is stronger in their energy, stronger in their conviction of what they believe, they will control the situation. So your what and your why need to be stronger than your how or your lack of how. So what I mean by that when I say lack of how and the energy of a lack of something, because some of you may be thinking, well, what does that mean, Dre? The lack of how? How can I have energy? Is in the following. Has any of you, or does any of you right now listening, have a situation, something that you want to achieve? You have an idea what you want to achieve, and maybe you have even a solid why you want to achieve it. However, since you don't know how to do it, your focus is so much on that how that you don't know how, that you tried something before and it didn't work, that no one has given you the information, that you've thought of everything you could possibly think of, and you're at the end of your wit's end of trying to think of this. You have no clue whatsoever how to do the thing. If you're spending more of your energy and more of your attention and focus on your lack of knowledge of how to do something, then that means that lack, that void of how is stronger than the drive of your what and your why. And if the focus that you're putting on the lack of how is stronger than your drive of what and why, you will not achieve it. Plain and simple. You want to achieve something, that what and the why have to be stronger than your lack of how. I've told you many stories here on the show, even from my own life. The first one that I probably have when I think of just as my career as an adult, trying to play pro sports, I didn't know how to do it. I knew what I wanted to do and I knew why I wanted to do it. And because those two drives were strong enough, I was able to figure out the how. But if I had focused on the how do I actually do this? Being that I didn't know and I didn't have the information, and that was actually the weakest part of my whole plan, was I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. So you could even say I didn't even have a plan at that time. Had I focused on that, I never would have achieved it. But instead, I focused on what I wanted and why I wanted it. Now, having some tools and some abilities in the process also matters too. So let's not discount that. But the whole point of what I'm giving you here, we're still on point number one. This requires you having a clear outcome, strong reasons, a high degree of personal accountability, and a high degree of personal agency, i.e. belief that you can make things happen under your own power despite the fact that circumstances may not be bent in your favor right now. That is what personal agency means. If you missed the episode where I talked about being a high agency person, that was episode 2053, how to be a high agency individual. High agency people are people who see themselves as having power over situations, specifically situations in their own lives. So when you don't know how to do something, you do not abdicate your high agency responsibility. You still have high agency. You just are focused more on the things that you can control, which is I know what I want and I know why I want it. Do you understand the difference with all of these? So make sure your outcome is clear and your reasons are also strong. You need both. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is the until mentality. The until mentality requires courage, balls, and what we'll call moxie, which is defined as force of character, determination, and nerve. All 3, courage, balls, and moxie. I talked about getting some balls in episode 1796. If you did not hear that episode, it is linked down below in the show notes, or you can just go to workonyourgamepodcast.com, where you can listen to any episode that is ever referenced in the history of the show. Most people simply do not have the balls to stick to this until mentality. And I'll tell you why. Not because they don't logically understand the concept. It's because most people can't stop themselves from worrying about how and why they might lose. Let me say that one again, because I'm describing somebody right now. Most people don't have the balls to stick to the until mentality because they cannot control their mindset and the way that they think. They can't control their focus, because what they keep focusing on, even though they logically understand they probably should not focus on this, they keep focusing on how they might end up losing, or how they will end up losing, or how they are losing right now in the moment, or how they have lost in the past and they don't know how they can avoid losing again. Most people just focus on the wrong things, and what you focus on, we all know, you create. So when you focus on losing, you focus on the fact that you don't have the information, you focus on you don't know what to do, you focus on things that didn't work in the past, you focus on this is not working in my favor right now, you focus on all these other people have resources and I don't. When you focus on those things, what you're doing is removing your agency. That personal agency that we talked about in episode 2053, every time you think about what you can't do, what you don't have, what has not worked for you in the past, and how you have failed before, all you're doing is removing urgency from yourself. You're basically draining the battery of your own high agency. Then it becomes medium agency, then low agency, then no agency. So to boil all this down, many people's focus, or inaccurate focus, is where we focus on things, but you just focus on the wrong thing that leads to a result that you don't want. This is what keeps you from having courage and balls and moxie. You can't have force of character and determination if all you're focusing on is how your character and determination aren't going to get you anywhere. Why would they show up to that party? They're not showing up. It's hard to stick to a plan when all you're thinking about is how everything in your plan could or will go wrong. And again, I've dealt with enough people, heard enough challenges to know that some people habitually think like this. They spend their whole lives thinking like this. Every time they come up with an idea or a new project or a new plan, the first thing they start thinking about is how it might not work, how it will go wrong. Now, this is not to say that you cannot strategize, which is thinking about, all right, what might be the bumps in the road here? Where may this plan not go exactly as I've expected it to? Or actually, where will this plan not go exactly as I expected it to? Let me plan in some contingencies. Let me make sure I have some branches on this tree. So if way A does not work, I still have options B, C, and D. I'm not saying do not do that. What I am saying, though, is do not focus on all the reasons why you will fail. Because when you tell your brain to focus on the reasons you will fail, your brain will supply you with a bunch of supporting evidence for why you are a failure. Why? Because the brain is the best personal assistant you will ever have. All it does is supply you supporting evidence for any idea that you give to it. And more often, and the more emotionally charged any idea you give to the brain, the stronger the response you will get back from your brain. This applies to every human being. I don't care who you are, how old you are, male, female, where you're from. It works the same in every single human brain. So if you want to stick to your plan, you need to control your focus. This is why I wrote the mental workbook, to help you control your focus by telling yourself, specifically, consciously, out loud, telling yourself what you are going to focus on. If you're not doing that on a day-to-day basis, no wonder you're getting all these random results when it comes from your mindset. You have to be willing to ignore the well-meaning people who have poor advice that probably won't help you succeed, including yourself. Sometimes you're giving yourself advice that's not going to help you. You got to be willing to tell yourself to be quiet. You have to be stubborn enough to ignore the quote-unquote facts and the quote-unquote reality that is sometimes smacking you in the face. Sometimes reality is smacking you in the face. You are being hit in the head with facts that are actually true, and you have to be stubborn enough to ignore them. Now, you may be wondering, why would you even want to be stubborn enough to ignore facts and reality, Dre? Here's why. Because, as I already told you, and I'll reiterate this again, situations in life will not always be set up or bending in your favor. There will be times when the facts and the reality are telling you to quit and walk away from a situation. If every human on the planet was rational and logical enough to listen to reality and facts every time the situation was saying this is not going to work, no one would accomplish anything. We would not have the motor vehicles. We would not have airplanes. We would not have skyscrapers. We wouldn't have a whole lot of things. We wouldn't have smartphones. I wouldn't be recording this in the way that I'm recording. We might not even have podcasts. We might not have social media. We might not have any of this, the internet. If every time somebody came up on a challenge of a situation and reality said this ain't going to work, and they said, you know what, reality, you're right, and they just quit, we would be probably 200 years back from where we are right now in terms of the forward movement of humankind. Why? Because somebody has to be stubborn enough and have moxie enough, have enough courage and enough balls to keep going even when the facts are saying you shouldn't keep going. This is why high agency is such a big deal. Because the few high agency people out there who have the balls to keep going despite what circumstances are telling them are the people who move all of us forward. Everybody moves forward because a few people had the balls and the courage and the moxie to keep going anyway. Maybe you'll be one of those people. Maybe not. I can't say, but you can say. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is the until mentality. The until mentality requires that you have your shit together. If you didn't hear me talk about having your shit together, that was episode 2032, titled, Why You Must Get Your Shit Together. Why is this important for the until mentality? Because this may be a long, bumpy ride that you're about to go on. Those of you who have the courage and the moxie to keep going, this is not going to be a smooth ride. There'll be many twists and many turns. You will need long-term focus for the until mentality, not just a quick burst of attention, and not quick bursts of attention here and there. A consistent focus. And you'll need all of your resources, which will be called into play. As I talked about in episode 609, time, money, attention, energy, and focus. You'll need all of those. And if you don't have your own shit together, and you have a whole lot of random stuff going on, it'll be really hard for you to maintain this mentality. Why? Because you'll be getting pulled in all different directions. You don't have a framework or a strategy for what you're doing and how you're doing it. You don't have much discipline in your execution if you don't have your shit together. So make sure you have your shit together before you even think about embarking on utilizing the until mentality. You got to know what you're doing, have all your, not necessarily all your ducks in a row and everything perfect, but you have to have a pretty solid idea of who you are and how you operate so that you can execute this strategy. But if you don't have that in place, as soon as something in life or one of your clients or one of your friends jumps up and yells boo, you're going to jump and you're going to go back to doing what you were doing before. This is why you got to have your shit together, enough that you can believe in yourself so that circumstances and other people or opinions or reality, quote unquote, don't throw you off course, because they will all try. Not because they're trying to hate on you or stop you from achieving, but simply because this is just the way the world works. That's why it's called the until mentality. If it was just everything was going to lay down and work perfectly in your way, then there'd be no need for me to even talk about this. But there is a need, and this is why. Let's recap today's class, which is the until mentality. I told you I'll be talking about this in the episode on resourcefulness over resources. Until is the key word for anyone who needs mental toughness. It is your ability to hang in there, push back against circumstances, and have some fight. Point number 1. When you know what you want and why you want it, it is inevitable that the how will either be figured out and or will reveal itself to you. In other words, the what and the why need to be stronger than the how, or the lack of how. This requires you having a clear outcome, strong reasons, and a high degree of personal accountability and personal agency. Point number 2. The until mentality requires courage, balls, and moxie, meaning your force of character, determination, and nerve. Most people don't have the balls to stick to the until mentality because they can't stop focusing on the wrong things, like why it's not going to work. It's hard to stick to a plan when that's what you're thinking about. You have to be willing to ignore people, including yourself, who give you lousy advice about quote unquote facts and quote unquote reality that is staring you in the face. Sometimes you have to go against the grain and be stubborn enough to do so. The few people who are the ones who change the world. And point number 3, the until mentality requires that you have your shit together because you're going on a long, bumpy ride with many twists and many turns. You need long-term focus, and if you don't have your shit together, it will be easy for situations and circumstances to throw you off course. That's why you got to have your shit together. If you don't know what I mean by having your shit together, listen to episode 2032 and make sure your shit is tight before you even think about embarking on utilizing this mentality. That said, send me a text so you can get my daily motivation text every day free of charge to your phone. My number is 305-384-6894. And when you are ready to step your game up to the next level and you're tired of going another month, another quarter, another year, not being where you want to be, then need to holler at me so we can talk about my coaching programs. Look at all of them, all your options, and let's get you started by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.